I would advise myself to lean more into the right decision I wanted to make for myself rather than waiting till I saw a sign or something, because really that inhibits you from failing. Failing is the only way that you really start to grow. Be okay to fail. It's okay to fail, and don't feel down on yourself for failing.
Welcome to Profession Session. I'm your host, Brody Vinson, and in this show I interview young business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals in all kinds of different areas, just to talk about how they got into their industry and some of the things that have allowed them to be successful so far. Today my guest is JP Mattingly. JP, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. This is a really cool interview for me to be able to do because of a couple of reasons. And one is that you're my cousin and I've known you pretty much my whole life. And another one is just that when I was getting started out in digital marketing, you really were my mentor and kind of showed me the ropes of what digital marketing was and just how to get into the space, and kind of helped get me pointed in the direction that I feel like took me to where I am today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. I used to express that sentiment the other night and made me tear up a little bit, so that was nice of you to do. You know, I remember at that time when you came to me, you were not really finding much passion out of what you were doing, even though you were really trying to find it. So I'm glad it all worked out.
Absolutely. It comes from the heart. I mean, it did help me out a lot. And it was just a little bit out of college, so it's kind of that time where, you know, people are switching from learning things theoretically to being thrown out into the world and having to figure out what to do. So it's a turbulent time in your life, just figuring out what you're going to do.
Yeah, it is. It's not easy to navigate, and there's a lot of options out there to choose from. So I'm sure, especially nowadays, it can feel increasingly confusing to find your footing.
This is just really cool for me to be able to do, and you're an absolute wealth of knowledge in the digital marketing space, and I'm really excited to get into your story and how you got here today.
Yeah, I look forward to it as well.
Definitely. Well, I think a good place to start might be just you getting out of college and kind of how you got into digital marketing and how that led you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I went to Ball State University in Indiana, and there, I knew immediately when I went there, it was for the telecommunications program. Okay. David Letterman graduated from there. They had the Letterman building, so it was pretty, high tech for what I was getting myself into. And I didn't know at the time that, digital marketing would revolve heavily around content creation and understanding how to atomize, like I talked about the other day, that content, but I was just getting myself into videography and film because it was interesting to me. And so that kind of like set a good foundation for me to understand at the foundations of marketing. It's really creating compelling content, creating stories that people resonate with to help them understand what businesses sell or what products are being released. And I've been able to tie those things together by going through a master's program in digital marketing, which allowed me to understand how to take what I've learned in my undergrad and apply it to business techniques to help businesses grow. And
did you do that master's program right out of college, or was that something you decided to do later on just based on the experience you had so far?
Yeah, that's it's probably a full other story, but after I graduated, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do with my life,
like
as most people. So I was a manager at Abercrombie & Fitch for 6 months, and I hated every day working there.
Have you seen that documentary that came out recently, White Hot?
Yeah, I did.
Was that pretty accurate?
Spot on, yeah, pretty spot on. But they seem to have evolved a lot since then.
That's good.
Yeah, during that 6 month period, I really had to do some soul searching, and I always wanted to move to a new city, like away from anything I knew. So that was kind of like one goal in mind. And then I knew I wanted to further my education. And in particular, I wanted to go to Full Sail University. I wanted to go there for undergrad, but it was way too expensive. And so I think that just being in a place of uncertainty and wanting to figure out more about who I was kind of led me to make that leap.
And that brought you to Orlando.
Yeah, exactly. That brought me down to Florida and Orlando. It brought me to Gainesville, where I had a couple jobs and met some of my best mentors. just really helped me expand myself in the way that I was looking for.
I think that's a really interesting subject you brought up, the whole process of finding mentors. And I'm curious, what did the process of finding a mentor look like for you, and what are maybe some tips on finding the right mentor?
I think finding a mentor is a very humbling process, because you have to kind of like swallow your pride and realize that you aren't like the right person. You're not right in what you do. You don't know what you're doing, especially when you're out of college. And that's a tough pill to swallow, because you just spent all this time learning what you're supposed to do.
And all of a sudden you face just the sheer lack of knowledge and experience that you really have.
Yeah, you have really no idea. Like, you're just scratching the surface when you're in college. And mentors really help elevate the education that you've learned and take you to a place that, helps you understand what you're doing for work at a deeper level. And so first, realizing that I needed that, and understanding that it's going to be uncomfortable, that's kind of like the first step. And then seeking those people out that really want to educate you, and you can feel it when you're talking to them and you present your work to them. You start to realize who's really like in it to mentor and who wants to do it. And when you find those people, you want to gravitate towards them and, try to like get more feedback from them, and continually put yourself in a position to be critiqued, because they like doing that. That's what they want to do. But if you fight it, they aren't going to want to do that. So you just have to be able to swallow your pride and be open to the experience.
I remember when I first started talking to you about digital marketing, one thing that you talking me through it helped with a lot was just contextualizing a lot of the stuff that I did know. I didn't know much at the time, but just helping contextualize what I did know really helped kind of get me pointed in the right direction for actually being able to do things with it.
Well, thanks. Yeah, that was a big deal in my mentorship when somebody was mentoring me. I learned by application. I can do the work up and down all day, but if I can't figure out where I went wrong or where I could be better in context, it's just not going to go anywhere. So that maybe is why I did that.
Well, you learned it from one place and you were able to hand it off to the next person, and hopefully I'll be able to do the same.
Yeah, you're already doing great things, so I'm sure you've already helped people.
I learned from the best.
Okay, we can be done. For sure.
One thing I feel like we should go over, just because I get a lot of questions about this, and I'm sure you get even more. How would you define digital marketing? Because I feel like people have a little bit of an incomplete view of what it is a lot of times, because it is so expansive.
Yeah, digital marketing now, today, I feel like is a lot of things. There's a lot that encompasses a digital marketer's job. But I think for the most part, like at the very base level of it, like the foundation of it, it's it's connecting people to brands in a digital way, like just through any avenue that might be, like an advertisement, a commercial, a radio spot, any sort of way that's through telecommunications. So
I think it's really cool that your background in undergrad was in telecommunications, because one, it kind of shows that you can enter the space from a lot of different areas, and I feel like that background was really important for you in knowing how to create content that would later become important in your career.
Yeah, it's much like a creative director or a director of photography. They likely started in photography, or they started in graphic design, because it gives them the foundation to help lead people that they then would be leading to help them produce bigger ideas. So I feel like having that foundation has helped me a lot.
Very cool. So we've kind of explained digital marketing. Next, I'd like to talk about what your first role was in digital marketing and how that kind of went on from there.
My first job out of my graduate program, I worked for Gainesville Health and Fitness in Gainesville, and you worked there too. And I got hired as their digital marketing specialist there. And at the time, that meant a lot of CRM work. Which I just a client resource management tool, like trying to make sure that I was on top of email marketing campaigns and analyzing data for leads that were coming in. It was very much, at the time, I felt boring, but now I really love it a lot, because I was just not really understanding what it meant to be able to do something like that at the time.
Right.
It didn't all connect for me until later in life.
The importance of it and just the applications that are available when you learn to do it like that.
Yeah, just how expansive it is and how much it means to an actual digital marketing, strategy.
Yeah.
So, my first job out of college was marketing personal training. It was kind of glamorous, but not so much. It was small town, but it was a great job for me because that's where I met my mentor.
Yeah.
And his name's John Carmine. He has been one of the best people in my life that's helped me understand how I should go about navigating my career.
That's awesome. That was your boss for that role, right?
That was my boss for 3 of my roles.
For 3 of your roles. Wow. Okay.
I went with him from Gainesville Health and Fitness to Santa Fe College, which is also in Gainesville, and I was in their creative services department doing a lot of videography and digital marketing for them. And then he went on to a software company where I got into SaaS, which was exactly what I didn't know I wanted. And he brought me along with him, and I was their marketing manager there, and I got to work on a lot of other things outside of digital marketing, but I was still working on digital marketing in the CRM world. And that's kind of like the whole process. He just taught me so much about how to be a better marketer.
So you go through those first 3 roles, and then what was the next role that you had after that?
Yeah, after Meridian LMS, it was a learning management system, the software I was marketing at the time. I went on to PureFit. So
learning management, meaning helping educate a company's employees?
Yeah, it's the software that educates employees. So, all the boring trainings people have to go through for, it's like sexual harassment training.
Or less boring if you do a good job, I guess.
Yeah. If there's great products out there now that do a great job at building, content that's actually engaging. But the LMS space, there's limited amount of players, and that was what I was figuring out how to market at that time.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But after that, I went on to PureFit. Which is where I'm at now. And I got really lucky with PureFit because I had heard about it when I was working at Gainesville Health and Fitness. So at the start of my career, I met the CEO of it, and it kind of was like a full circle moment to be hired for the team and be like poised to actually take on the role that they had open. So that kind of like laid the groundwork for where I'm at today.
And you've been able to grow with them for a while now, which is really, really cool. And there's been a number of milestones that you've had with PureFit. What stand out as some of the most important and most resounding ones for you? Yeah,
there's been quite a bit. As you said, I've been able to grow with them a lot. They are so supportive of my career and my personal life. Like, they have such great work-life balance, which is why I've stayed so long.
It's really important.
Yeah, it is, and I love my boss. It's all a great equation that just makes it work well. But some of the key moments I think in my career with PureFit has been launching a product for a Medicare space. An area that was very ripe for disruption. It was a Medicare wellness benefit. I also got to go through the company acquisition recently, which was incredible.
Congrats on that, by the way. I mean, that's huge, and it's got to just be an earth-shaking moment for the whole company.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to know that I was a part of something so pivotal to be desired by a company like our mother company now, or our parent company, FitOn. They definitely saw the value of corporate wellness, and we did too early on. And so now that we're paired together, it's like a match made in heaven.
Absolutely, and I think you mentioned to me that the acquisition was because PureFit had just done a really great job of building out the corporate wellness capabilities, and that's what FitOn, the parent company, was really looking for.
Yeah. FitOn is more of like a direct consumer product. So it'd be like something that you could go search for in the App Store, download it, and really quickly use it for free. Whereas PureFit is something that your employer or a health insurance company, more B2B to C, where we go through a actual company to get to the end user, to have them then use our network of fitness experiences. So
very cool.
Just a little bit different, but now we cover the gamut of the entire space.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And another thing that you haven't mentioned yet is that you were actually part of a commercial for PeerFit where you got to be pretty heavily involved in the ideation and a lot of other stuff. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, PeerFit, I mean, corporate wellness in general is not like this sexy topic. Like, it's not this like interesting thing that people think immediately about. So there was a huge challenge of trying to make something that's not that appealing or not talked about much interesting.
Yeah.
And so that was the challenge that we approached our commercial with, and we approach corporate wellness now with that lens as well as a company. And the commercial that we produced actually did so well that we won an Emmy, a regional Emmy for it.
Congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Appreciate that.
And we actually have the Emmy here. Do you want to show it?
This was the Emmy. It's pretty cool to actually have to show off.
It is, yeah.
I get lots of compliments on it, so.
It looks great, and it's really cool to have something like that just represents such a pivotal moment for the company.
Yeah. Our company does a great job at recognizing stuff like that. Like you'll see on my desk, I did mention as well, but we were on Inc. 5000's fastest growing companies. We were in the top 10 percentile for that. So, we've done quite a bit as a company, just collectively, and they always recognize us whenever we do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What are some of the metrics that are used to determine the Inc. 500's fastest growing companies? It's
really above kind of the discussions that I have day to day, but I do know the real way that they actually like measure that is just how much growth you experience from a revenue perspective. Versus how much you're actually spending.
Right, okay.
So,
are you controlling costs and growing fast, that kind of thing? That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's how they recognized us.
So you've been with PeerFit for a while now, and we talked about some of the big milestones while you've been there. What are some ways that you feel like you've grown as a professional being with a company that's growing so fast for a while? It's
hard to put my finger on one thing in particular. I know for sure, though, that because PeerFit, because the company that I work with, they do such a great job at developing everybody if you want it. And so I've always wanted to be a leader, and I've always wanted to mentor and manage, and they've provided me that path. And so I know for me that challenge was really, really hard to understand. And my boss has been supportive through that whole process. And so now, today, if I look back 4 years ago when I first started, I wouldn't have anticipated that type of growth being accessible to me at one company.
Right.
But because I was so ambitious and spoke always about what I wanted to my boss, I just spoke very candidly, she made it happen. She made me feel supported and pushed me through and made things that I wanted come to life. That's awesome. It tells a lot about what you want to be looking for in a boss and in a company that you want to stay with for a while. Absolutely. That is the primary reason I think anybody either stays or leaves a company is their boss. Yeah. If you don't have a good boss, you're out. It's every day is miserable. You don't feel heard. You don't feel like you can have open communication with them. I think that your relationship with your boss should be that of a serious partner. That the level of communication that you have with them should be so transparent that you can talk about anything, and you should be able to express what you want and feel like you can be heard. Yeah. And you mentioned that she's been really supportive in your professional life and in your personal life, and I feel like if you've got both of those, you can't really go wrong. Absolutely. I could rave about her up and down all day, and I will follow her wherever she goes because she just is. She's such a strong person, and I want to be like her when I grow up. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, another thing I'd like to touch on is some of the traveling you've done and the different cities that you've lived in. I'm curious what drove you to want to live in a few different cities and just what kind of brought you along that path? Yeah, working from home isn't new for me. I know it's kind of been this like swelled up topic since COVID, but I've been working from home since 7 years now. And as soon as I started doing it, I knew I wasn't going to go back to anything else. The amount of flexibility your life gains from that is something I didn't realize I needed at the time, but now that I know it exists, I don't think I could see anything else any other way.
Yeah.
So, as you,
same.
you touched on a good point. The flexibility it provides you to really explore your life is important. You spend 8 hours of your day with this company every day for an entire, however long you're there. And that's a lot of time to be somewhere. And so, when you think about how you can balance working working and also figuring out your life, you need to have that flexibility. And so I've moved around quite a bit because of that. Like, I just feel like I want to embrace my life. I want to explore my life. I want to feel like I'm living my life to the fullest while I'm also working as hard as I can.
With the technology that's allowed working from home in the last 5, 10, 15 years, you really can get the best of both worlds in that way, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, you can, and you just have to want it, and you can't be afraid to ask for it. And you can't feel, unmotivated to seek it out. I think a lot of people get complacent or just really comfortable with where they're at, and change is hard, but as soon as you know what you want and you go after it, you can, figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
So,
did you start work from home with PureFit?
PureFit has been a work from home company, and since its inception.
Okay.
So it's been 12 years they've been working from home.
Okay.
So they kind of have really, they pioneered it. Like, not pioneered it, but they have been adamant to talk about it publicly so that people know that it's something that you can do.
What would you say to someone who might be looking to shift into more of a work from home role? What would you say that are some maybe talking points that they could bring up to their boss or whoever's in charge of making that decision that might help convince them or just shed a little bit of light on some of the benefits that can bring?
Yeah, I feel strongly that data really helps prove points. Obviously, that's why I'm in the field I do. But I think, when somebody approaches that conversation, they shouldn't be afraid to ask, what is the primary reason why you are making this decision? What is it based on? What facts is it based on?
Yeah.
Why are you not engaging in a work from home policy? There's numerous statistics out there that talks about productivity and working from home. On the opposite end, I don't know what is out there that they would be able to use to argue the case that staying in office every day of the week is something that actually works for a company.
Right.
So it's just like to getting the facts, I think, first, and then feeling comfortable asking for that in general, I think, is just like starting the conversation, like having the ability to have that transparency with your boss, like I talked about earlier.
Right.
So that you can ask for those things. When you're doing, negotiation salaries in the beginning of the year and role kind of like negotiations, when you're going through those conversations and they're talking about your performance, that's an important time to bring those things up, because if you're performing well, you should be able to come to the table with a bit of points that you want to negotiate on.
Yeah. Just like you would negotiate for a better salary or a raise, a bonus or something.
Ask for everything. Yeah. Ask for working from home, ask for a higher salary, ask for a title. They're going to have to work backwards from something, and so you might as well ask for the most.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And so you've been work from home this whole time, and we're kind of talking about some of the cities that you've moved around to. You've been to Orlando, Atlanta, and then now in Chicago. Didn't even mention that at the intro, but we're in Chicago for this, where you live. Yeah. What have been some of your favorite things in each city, and also maybe some things that you weren't as big of a fan of in each city?
Yeah, so I've moved around quite a bit, as you said, and I've really, before I started doing all this moving, I had an idea in my head that I really wanted to explore, everything that this area of the world had to offer. I can work here freely in 51 states. Forget my own geography. So why not explore as much as I can? And so I really outlined all the things that I was looking for to explore out of cities, like to understand. And from that, I kind of narrowed it down to the cities I thought would offer that. And so I've been doing that. since I set that goal out. And, Orlando was my first stop, and I was there for so long, and I loved that city. It was like how the first home you live in is kind of like the home your parents chose. You didn't really get to choose it yourself.
Yeah.
The second home that you move to is really your space. Like, you built that life. That's yours. So that was what Orlando was for me. It was my home. That's my home.
Yeah. It's really cool. I feel the same way about Orlando.
Yeah, it's like I spent 7 years there. It's quite a bit of time.
It is.
And so after that time period ended, I think really just exploring new cities, meeting new people, networking. That's the real value add that I was looking for. Atlanta wasn't my favorite stop. I think that there's a lot of potential there, but I just wasn't motivated to tap into it for whatever reason.
Orlando didn't click with you on like a full, all the way kind of level.
Yeah, the type of people that I was looking to meet from a networking perspective just weren't there for me. Like, I wasn't able to expand in the way I was trying to, and maybe that is part of me, and I don't know for sure. But
if the city's not clicking, it's not clicking.
Yeah, so I moved on from it to Chicago, which has always been a dream of mine, and I can see why it's always been a dream of mine. These last 6 months have just flown by, and I've loved every experience and minute of being here. So
I've been here all weekend, and it's my first time in Chicago. I've been incredibly impressed with the city.
Yeah,
it's just, there's so many distinct neighborhoods, and every square inch of the city is just packed tight, so walkable, so many different things to do. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's inspiring to be in it, especially in the summertime. And it's got a lot to offer outside of just like the normal like city limits, where you're kind of downtown, walking around, going out to bars and drinking and whatnot.
I would say that's a very small part of it. That's the part that's impressed me the most, because I've tried to go to a couple different areas while I've been here. We're in a totally different area than downtown right now, and there's probably 5 or 6 other distinct ones I've been to. It's incredible. Really.
Yeah, every little neighborhood has its own charm. It's like its own little city. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I love it here a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I met some of your friends as well. It seems like just a really good network of people here as well. And you talked about networking in a new city. I guess while we're on that subject, I'm kind of curious whether you have any good tips for someone who is finding themselves in a new city. Maybe it's a city that they chose, or maybe even they had to move there for work. What are some tips for doing that networking and kind of expanding your network in a new city?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to put yourself out there. I think the biggest hurdle in the process of networking and just relationship building is the unknown of knowing whether or not how somebody feels about you, or how you're going to interact in a situation, and that gives a lot of people anxiety. So it's like being able to allow yourself to go into those situations with an open perspective and open mind, and not allowing yourself to get in your own way. Just go out, make an effort to make plans with people, even if they aren't making plans with you. Learn from people, meet from people that you've met already. Like, try to network with those people so that they start inviting you to certain things, or go plan things for them and have a party at your house, and just doing
take
things take the initiative and put yourself out there, because it really will pay off.
I like that. And it makes it easy when you're in a city with plenty to do.
Yes.
So Chicago's a great choice.
Yeah, there's too much to do.
Yeah. But I feel that in Orlando sometimes too. You have to be kind of selective sometimes. Especially if you're busy with work, sometimes you gotta say no if your friends want you to come out to the bar, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've learned to say no lately.
Just part of figuring out the work-life balance.
Yep.
So on another note, we kind of just breezed through a lot of the work you do with digital marketing, just setting up your background a little bit. But I'd like to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the CRM work that you do, and the platform of choice that you use, which is HubSpot. And that's something that you showed me a lot when I was first talking to you about digital marketing, and I just was blown away with the capabilities of it and what you can do.
Yeah, I said earlier, CRM is really kind of where I fell into unintentionally, but now as I've kind of grown in my career, I've grown appreciation for it. And the reason is that there's so much value to being informed by data on how you approach marketing campaigns. And so usually it's really hard to find that and track that because for whatever reason, there hasn't been somebody usually managing that well, or somebody that's like looking in the system and thinking on how it should be set up to manage that well. And so that's where I really think that because I can do that, and because I've been able to build the system, the CRM, in a way that supports, informing my marketing campaigns and the team's marketing campaigns, that's really played a huge role in how we approach our marketing strategy. And so having the ability to understand a CRM and how it works and how sales teams and account management teams and marketing teams work inside of that and how they all relate under one technology really helps you understand how to build the strategy to hit the buyer at every point in the journey, from an unknown prospect all the way to an evangelical customer.
Yeah.
So it's important to know every step in that process to have marketing campaigns to address every pain point.
Absolutely, and just keep
CRMs
people in the funnel.
Yeah. And HubSpot, I drank the Kool-Aid with that stuff. It's like a beautiful technology, and it grows with your business in every way that you are trying to grow. And there's a part to the product that you may not be using now that you might be using in a year from now. And so
you could start as simple as just a very basic CRM, or you could be setting up automated workflows with little trigger points for any kind of thing that a customer could do, that have an email campaign go out or this series of surveys go out. It's really incredible, just the capabilities of it.
Yeah.
Its ability to grow.
Yeah. You can get pretty detailed. It's insane.
Yeah.
With the automation aspects of a CRM. And that's really where the value comes in, is like you're managing a CRM well, you get to leverage the data that you manage well in a way that is automated. So
and just expand what you as one person are able to do, really, because you can't be, you're limited to a certain extent in being able to manually send out emails to all the clients. But if you have certain email campaigns, and that's something I would say my experience with HubSpot, I had the most experience with the email campaigns. It's a very simple drag and drop interface where you're editing these emails, making them look the way you want to, and then the data that you get back from them is so granular.
Yeah, and I would say that you really would just are scratching the surface. Some of the campaigns that I've found to myself working on lately have really opened my mind up to just like how automation can be a complementary tool to not only the marketing team for nurturing leads, but for the sales team, when they have a deal that goes idle, like when it's in your pipeline and it sits there for more than 5 or 6 days, you can have automation that picks up the slack for your team and automatically sends email notifications directly from your sales team. And that lift there in and of itself, when you think about the capacity of a sales team, a sales rep can't manage, an infinite amount of deals, but automation can.
Yeah.
And so if your sales rep is on top of like a deal and it falls off, automation kicks in, it picks up the slack for them where they might not be able to.
And in the case of a deal, it may be just that one extra touch point that you need to close the deal.
Yeah, and you can get even more detail there. When a deal goes idle at a certain stage in the process, what those people need, those prospects need, in order to be educated at that point in the process. So you can have automation in place that if it goes idle, it can deliver educational pieces that a deal would need to push forward.
Would you say a huge part of just keeping up the touch points with customers is the education?
I think that's a fraction of it. Education is just a little bit of it. Usually people nowadays are really into the idea of an inbound marketing strategy, which is prospects informing themselves on products. So they're going to find information about what you sell, whether you give it to them or not.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I think now about that I think people get hung up on is just the relationship building part. Usually you have no idea if you're in communication with the right person that's a decision maker. You need to know who those people are and how to navigate conversations to get to the right person. And HubSpot creates a great tool for that as well, which allows you to start labeling prospects at companies based off of their level of decision making.
Wow.
So there's lots to the tool that just you can get pretty detailed on, and not to like take it too far, but even further than that, you can have automation in place to educate non-decision makers inside of a company to know how to tell decision makers within their company how to buy our product.
Right, because sometimes by design it's very difficult, in most cases probably by design it's very difficult to reach that decision maker, because people know that they're decision makers, they're going to be hitting them with all kinds of offers. So
they're inundated. There's no space for them to even read an email, a sales email.
Exactly.
They have people that aren't inundated within the company who do this type of research. So you have to build what are called champions within organizations, so that those champions then tell those decision makers about your product.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
There's tons of automation strategies that you can explore for anything, really.
Another really cool thing that you showed me about HubSpot, I remember back in the day, is just the dashboards that you're able to build out for the data collection. And you had these incredibly comprehensive dashboards that showed all kinds of data points that really allowed you to be informed on exactly what was happening with your campaigns.
Yeah. I think a big part of marketing is trying to prove why you're spending so much money.
Exactly.
And not a lot of people can prove that typically, because the way prospecting and lead generation works, it's hard to fully track that process from start to finish, from, like I said earlier, from a lead that has no idea who you are to a customer that's an evangelical. It seems like nowadays the CRM lets us do that, especially HubSpot. There's a lot of tracking mechanisms built into it. If you build your entire business on it, like account management, sales, and marketing, you can track everything from start to finish and find out just what made the most impact, what was the strongest attributor to closing that deal. And HubSpot makes it so easy with their dashboards, because they give weight to landing pages, to forms, to advertisements, to automation. There's weight to that, and an attribution.
The different points along the customer journey that aren't just the very end.
Yeah, it applies weight to all of those touch points on the dashboard, so that you can see at a glance what this prospect went through from start to finish, and how much time they spent at each of these touch points, and how much of that touch point they consumed.
Yeah.
And it really allows you to get a bigger picture of just how well marketing works.
And for a marketing professional, it allows you to really give weight to the strategy that you're pursuing, and internally know whether it's working, for one, but also be able to show those results to whoever you are working for, the company you're working for, and be able to prove the results of your actions, so that you can continue doing them and get approved to.
Yeah, you can see what's working well, but even more important, you can see what's not working well. And that, I think, it has really helped us get better at our strategies. The data that you store on things that you lose is just as important, I've come to discover lately. And your CRM is this wealth of data that allows you to mine historical information and try new strategies on that historical information.
That's interesting.
So, things that might not have worked because you were testing at that time for these prospects, you've refined over the years, you can now reapply those new strategies to those old prospects that you had.
I like that, yeah. Old prospects or old campaigns where maybe they just weren't implemented right or something.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And that's more of what I've been doing lately, is looking within rather than trying to bring in new prospects and try to help people understand our product and brand. I want to look at the old prospects. I want to look at why we lost them.
Right.
Yeah.
And can we get them back?
Yeah.
And you mentioned when we were talking off air the other day, that you've really kind of shifted focus on, in that same vein, on just focusing on existing data and being able to leverage that better. I think that kind of goes along to that and supports that point.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible what we've been able to see just from a data perspective, and built tons of dashboards like you talked about just to prove it. So it's I would say that has been something that I haven't really given much thought to until this year, is that historical approach.
And another thing that I remember was really cool about you being able to build out those dashboards is, because we haven't mentioned this yet, but you do a little bit of freelance work as well with other companies. And I remember when you were first showing me all of this, I think you had just, for the first time, negotiated a deal where the company you were doing some freelance work with, rather than just having a flat fee, you were actually able to scale the revenue that you, or the pay that you were getting from the company up with the growth that you were directly attributing to the data points. And I think that's a really cool thing for maybe a freelance marketing professional or someone working for a company. If you're able to set it up and frame it that way, you can really grow with the company better.
Yeah. I think the biggest part, like I said before, when you come to a negotiation is having your facts, or just like when you're trying to talk about something that you want to prove a point on, you need to have data or information to back that up. And the only way that you can really do that is if you're starting to track it. And so when you start to track it, you start to realize, like, oh, I might be getting underpaid for this because they're making a shit ton of money off of this deal, and I'm only seeing a fraction of a percent come back to me being paid for it.
Exactly.
And so when you start to see how the things that you do directly contribute to something being closed or something being won, it matters. And if you can prove that through like a dashboard or some facts, then it makes your point even more believable.
Gives you much more negotiating power.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know a number of young marketing professionals actually that struggle with that point. Especially when they're in a position where they're essentially the entire marketing department for a very small business. That's a common thing where a marketing professional is kind of forced into just being an all-around business development person, and they're doing a great job, but they struggle to be able to show exactly how much their efforts are contributing to things.
Yeah, and it really does suck that you're expected to do your job and then prove why your job is effective, even though there's been success shown. It sucks that you have to do that, but you have to do that because otherwise you'd be basing, people who you're talking to would be basing their decision making on something that's not tangible. And so if they were to do that with every department and every single person that came to them with this argument, it would get messy really fast.
Exactly.
So it's understandable, but it sucks. So, it's like trying to figure out how to build that habit and find a way to get into the CRM and work with your CRM managers or whoever's managing it at your company to help them understand what you're trying to track. Because the chances are that they can figure it out. It's pretty malleable, every CRM out there. You just have to know what you're looking for.
Yeah, I feel like it's just about kind of talking through the entire customer journey as it pertains to the specific company and identifying those points, because if it's not talked about and it's not clearly laid out, then no one has a super clear understanding of it. That can help the sales department a lot too, and them just understanding where they need to really put in some extra work to help convert.
Exactly. If you map out your buyer's journey from start to finish and know every point in that touch point that you need, every friction point that you face along the conversations, every no, every reason why you get a no, and having campaigns to back that up as well, you'll understand at a higher level where your efforts need to be built, first of all, like where you need to build marketing collateral, and second of all, where you are best at closing and helping the process along the way. And you'll also see areas where you can improve. And so I think just mapping it out from start to finish and knowing every single point along the way, whether it's good or bad, having that as right in front of you helps you start to develop those points that you talk about in conversations to negotiate.
Exactly. And another thing that I think is really cool, just in the same vein of conversation as all the CRM stuff, is just you mentioned before, as you got into it deeper and deeper, being a little seasoned in the CRM work that you do, is just how applicable it is to any company. Any company needs to be data driven and be understanding of what's working and what's not with their customers to be able to grow fast and to be able to expand. I mean, otherwise if you keep doing the same things, you're not going to grow.
Yeah. The biggest thing is that marketing can apply to anything. Any marketing technique that you have can apply to anything. Your challenge is understanding the product. And so once you understand the product, you apply all the techniques that you already know just to how that product works. Once you have the buyer journey mapped out.
Exactly.
So it's pretty easy to just take what you know and apply it to pretty much anything.
Which is a really cool thing about marketing. I remember that was one of the big things that we talked about when I was thinking about getting into it, and that was a huge thing that drew me to it. Was just, you can enter any industry from this. You really can. And if you're in a position just out of college or something like I was, a couple of years when I kind of got into it, and you don't really know what it is you want to do yet, it's a really good entry point to anything, because you learn the things that work well, and then the industry comes as it comes.
Yeah, and then maybe someday you start to become a specialist in certain industries. Like, I would say that I'm a specialist in SaaS. SaaS products.
Which is software as a service.
Yeah, and there's tons of different products out there. I feel like software as a service is kind of where the future is going. Every industry is going to offer some sort of SaaS product eventually, and anything that you do nowadays is going to be through the internet. So it's only a matter of time.
I completely agree. I mean, and it's just getting more and more niche as things go along. Like the product that you have is pretty niche. It's focused on really developing a corporate wellness program within a company, and that can apply to almost any company as well. And it's
health and wellness tech.
Exactly.
Like fintech. Like, there's tons of tech out there. It's just the industry specific type of stuff that gets a little bit more niche.
A lot of options with it.
Yeah.
Well, on a completely different vein of conversation, another thing I wanted to kind of go over with you, going back to the fact that you've kind of gone to a couple different cities, is you've done a little bit of, I guess, what I would call real estate investing as you've had your career develop and gone from city to city. How did you first decide? So what that started with was you buying your first home in Orlando, and it's kind of grown from there. How was that something that you got involved in? How did you decide that you wanted to buy your first home?
Goes back to that conversation point of finding mentors. You don't just need a career mentor. You should have a financial mentor, a personal mentor, maybe even a therapist, just to help you understand your own thoughts and understand the world. Because there's just so many pieces to it that your parents could never educate you fully on what it is. They get 18 years with you, and in those 18 years, they're still learning at the same time you are.
Yeah.
And so, I think keeping that perspective, you should find a mentor that understands real estate if you wanted to get into real estate. And for me, that's what I accidentally fell into, is somebody that saw somebody who was inquisitive. I asked a lot of questions, and she liked that, and as soon as she realized I was serious about buying a home, she helped me understand what that process was like. And then it just was an extra bonus that she was an investor herself. She invests in real estate herself, her and her husband. So she taught me, everything about that and how it works, and how to renovate a home, and how to increase its value, and what to look for and what not to look for. So you just need the right people around you. You need to have the desire to want to do that first, and then you'll figure it out.
Ask the questions, just be curious.
Yeah, and real estate wasn't my intention. I never thought I would own a home, but it's so easy. I mean, relatively speaking, it seems much harder than it actually is to buy your first home. Until
you start asking questions and realize what it is you need to be doing.
Exactly, and then it becomes this snowball effect. I just sold my house, and
congrats on that, by the way. That's awesome.
Thanks. It's a big deal because I now see the value of owning and selling and seeing the increase in value of something that you worked hard on.
Because it sets you up for potentially the next house that's going to get you to the next house. And it's something that can allow you to build equity in yourself and in your personal wealth.
Yeah, it's another stream of income. Yeah, it's just diversifying your income.
So another thing I kind of wanted to do is, just because you have such a vast knowledge of digital marketing tactics in different areas, so I thought it would be cool to go through kind of a role-playing exercise where we just talk about maybe a fictional kind of scenario where someone's looking to expand their marketing efforts for their company or their pursuit, and just kind of talk about some of the first things that you would do, first things that you would suggest. So I thought it'd be interesting, and we talked about this a little bit off air, is talking about someone who might be trying to resell shoes. I know a few people that do this personally, where they'd shop in kind of different avenues online for new trending shoes, maybe trending sneakers, and then they purchase them and try to resell them for a profit. So if you were building a business out of that, what would be some of the first things that you might suggest for someone who is looking to expand their digital presence there?
Yeah, I think the first question I would really want to understand from them is if they were trying to build a brand or just something that they can, resell the shoes. Like, is it just like they're like an Amazon marketplace type of thing? If they were trying to build a brand, it would be a different story. I would definitely have a lot of questions around that. But if it's just a reseller just trying to throw things up online and see if they stick, then is that like the kind of avenue that you think they take, or like build an actual brand?
Let's talk about maybe building an actual brand, because it would be I guess you could go either way, but it would be kind of my intuitive thought that building the brand is a better long-term strategy if you want it to be something that you do long-term. Yeah. And I think it's probably just a more valuable conversation to think about the long-term growth of a brand and someone really building a lasting and sustainable company. Yeah,
there's quite a bit to do, but I'll try to give Cliff Notes version of it. Yeah. So when you're first starting out as a brand, you really want to understand what your message is and your identity. I feel like when you're an artist like that, or you're reselling something that's already produced, it's hard to know exactly what your footing is, because you're trying to find a key differentiator from you in the marketplace. So really thinking deeply about why somebody would want your product and why they would come to your site to help really develop that brand message is, I think, key. Understanding your mission and why you're doing what you're doing. Obviously, for example, your mission might be that you're a long time just enthusiast of the sneaker, the high fashion sneaker design space, and you just want to be able to provide that to as many people as possible. Yeah, I think the mission could be taking the labor out of searching for new fashion trends in shoes. I like that. That person might take it upon themselves because they are a hobbyist, and people like me who don't do much shoe research, I wouldn't know these trends. So you're really taking that work off of me to have to do the research, because you're curating, things that I would like or that I should know about. So it's really understanding your brand, your message, your mission, and then from there creating what your product is, understanding what your product is and having a description of what that product is. Like I said, most companies are internet-based now, and this is a reseller, so it's understanding your brand enough to build a brand identity online. People should be able to recognize what differentiates you immediately as an online presence. And so coming up with your colors, your logos, how you write, even the tone of voice that you write in, coming up with an Instagram or social media strategy that supports that look, that tone, and the content supports that tone. Having people work collaboratively with you on building out partnership programs and understanding how you can connect to the bigger picture, and if there's any opportunity there to help build sort of an affiliate network. Start having those conversations. You want to have, when you launch a product, you want to have a good base to pick from, actually market to, so that they can start spreading the message. So building as much of a network as you can with your existing network, as well as people that are affiliates in that similar space, seeing if you can tap into their network. I think that gets you off on the right foot after you've developed all the brand identity points, the mission, everything that you need to be successful.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that gives a lot to go off of if you're starting out. I mean, just really getting yourself out there and in all the right avenues, but in a very consistent way so that your brand is recognizable.
Yeah. So it's not just like, doesn't seem like something temporary.
Mm-hmm.
You want it to feel like something substantial. Otherwise people can sense that.
Yeah.
You know, if your objective is just to make money quick, people can sense that. Mm-hmm. And so you want to have this authenticity about you that feels substantial.
And I know for me, at least, when I am considering maybe a new brand for something that I think I'll repurchase, I want to grow with that brand. And I think people intuitively, naturally just want to grow with a brand. So if it feels like something that's going to stay around for a while, that's comforting, knowing that you could come back and get that same experience.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things to note as well is don't get too hung up on small details in the beginning. When you're building a new brand and you're trying to build the marketing strategy and everything, it can seem very overwhelming because there's so much that you could do. I recommend breaking up anything that you do at all, period, in life really, into phases. Mm-hmm. And so, phase one can be the foundation of something, the bare bones of something, because the plan is to iterate and grow and improve upon it into your phase 2, 3, 4, or whatever. So understanding at a foundational level what the bare bones is that you need to build that authenticity, and then growing from there.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. Well, there's a couple other questions that I have for you that I like to ask in every interview. And the first one would be, so you've been in this industry for a while now, a number of years, in the digital marketing industry as a whole. And I'm curious about if you were to be able to go back in time and just talk to a young JP as he was first getting into the industry, having the knowledge and the wisdom of the years of experience that you have now, what are just a couple things that you would tell him to do differently as he's entering the space?
I don't think it's much to do with my technical experience as much as it is a confidence thing. When we're young, we're developing a sense of self. Mm-hmm. And so leaning into the things that you think are right doesn't always feel comfortable.
Right.
So I would advise myself to lean more into when I felt like that there was a right decision I wanted to make for myself, rather than waiting till, I saw a sign or something. Yeah. Because really that inhibits you from failing. Mm-hmm. And failing is the only way that you really start to grow. Yeah. And so just fail, be okay to fail. Like, mm-hmm. It's okay to fail, and don't feel down on yourself for failing.
Just try to fail up.
Yeah.
And then that's really cool and very insightful. And I think in general, just having that confidence and the ability to lean into things that are a little uncomfortable is a very good way to just help yourself grow quickly. Yeah. More quickly than you thought was possible.
Yeah, it's literally the only way.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And the other question that I would have for you is just, so the show is called Profession Session, and I'm curious, what does being a professional mean to you personally?
Yeah, I would feel that being a professional isn't so much as how I conduct myself at my job. I think being a professional is how I impact others, how I bring others up around me, like how I help inform and how I mentor and how I take what I've learned and share it. I think, being a professional can be a number of things, like maturity or making the right choices or being, very scheduled and regimented. But I think, being somebody who's a professional means that you have a lot of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So ultimately the goal is to share. Yeah. So just become a professional sharer. I don't know. It's like just I think that creates a better atmosphere for you to become even better at what you do. And even more professional.
And it helps you improve your own industry around you. Yeah. And if you want to be in an industry long term and you're improving the industry by giving back in that way, it's good for everyone in the industry.
Yeah, it can be really good, but I think that feeling confident, like I said earlier, to be like that is the first challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And is there anything else that you would want to give just to the audience at home, just talking about the space of digital marketing or being a professional or anything that you've learned along the way that you'd want to give back?
I mean, the reason I feel like I've been so positioned well to experience what people I think call luck. Like, I feel like luck is just when you're the most prepared for the best opportunities. And so when you prepare yourself to be ready for these big opportunities, be open to just being uncomfortable all the time. Because it's not going to feel like success isn't going to just feel like one day it just changes. Like you just one day wake up and you're successful. It's like a very, very glacially moving like an initiative in your life. And I think I still don't feel successful. So don't get down on yourself. Just trust the process.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, JP, thank you so much for being on here. This has been a really awesome conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm glad you could make it to Chicago and interview me.
I'm glad you had me. Thank you so much for having me and showing me around the city and everything. It's been awesome.
You'll have to come back.
Absolutely. I think I will be, because I have loved this city. And I probably saw like 0.5% of it.
Yeah, there's so much more. And just don't come back in the winter. But
yeah, that's what I've heard.
We'll see you back here then.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And this has been Profession Session. I've been your host, Brody Vinson. My guest has been JP Mattingly of PeerFit and many other freelance ventures and just real estate investing, anything that he wants to do to make himself a little more uncomfortable and grow.
Yep.
Awesome. Signing off. Thanks so much for tuning into Profession Session. I'm your host, Brody Vinson. Stay tuned for new episodes every week and short clips of deep dives into specific topics that I put out on different social media channels. We could be found on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, all major podcast platforms. You can find my guest in the details of this video or podcast. And if you happen to know a young standout business owner, professional, or entrepreneur that you would think would be a good fit for Profession Session, DM me or get in contact with me anywhere and just let me know. And they could be the next to tell their story here. Until next time, again, this has been Profession Session. Stay focused, stay hustling, and stay networking.